Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. In today's episode, we're going to go out with our elytra. We're going to fly a good old distance and return to a structure that I found on a live stream that we have not managed to talk about yet because they're actually fairly difficult to find. So we're going to climb to the top of this hill over here, we're going to take off into the air, and we're going to fly north to the swamp that we've discovered. And then we're going to go a little bit west. And I've got to say the trip getting here by elytra is so much more convenient than traveling by any other means. Just being able to fly directly over the mountains is really the quality of life change you think it is. And it only took me 3 fireworks to get here with adequate gliding. So we managed to save a little bit on fireworks as well. We are going downriver though today because it isn't actually in the swamp itself that we're looking for this structure. It is out here in the taiga biome, or potentially in this tall birch forest, what is called in the game's terminology old growth birch forest. But finding this structure is a little difficult because it is mostly buried. Today, as you probably can tell from the title of the video already, we are after a trail ruins, and I'm pretty certain that there was one down by the side of the river over here in this spruce forest. Yes, here we go. Notable by the amount of terracotta that you will find on the surface, a few mud brick blocks occurring naturally, a mud brick slab here even, and some suspicious gravel. This is the beginning of a trail ruins structure. In order to excavate the trail ruins structure, it goes down into the ground pretty far from here. We're going to have to dig this out and determine in which direction we need to dig for the remainder of the structure. So we're going to be moving stuff around here a little more carefully than we would otherwise, especially since if any of this suspicious gravel has an air block below it and it is disturbed, it will fall, the object inside it will break, and we won't be able to obtain the loot from the suspicious gravel block. The object that it's inside will vanish forever, so we actually need to be quite careful, and to that end, I'm going to be making a crafting table, and I brought with me the supplies to make a bunch of brushes, because as we find this suspicious gravel, we are going to be collecting the items and storing them in a chest so we can see exactly what we retrieve from this trail ruins. But the other way we're going to have to dig this out very specifically is unfortunately visible from here, because when I was looking around this area, I realized that there were a couple of rivers and aquifers cutting through the area, and to my astonishment and I guess dismay, we dove down into the river here on the live stream, and I discovered that a bunch of the structures were under the surface of the water. And that actually includes some of the suspicious gravel that we're going to be trying to carefully excavate as we go. So I'm probably going to go back and get hold of a conduit, or at least some water-breathing potions, but I think a conduit might be a good idea, because that will allow us to breathe underwater permanently, and we can take our time digging up some of the trail ruins here and making sure it is secure, making sure the gravel isn't disturbed, and making sure we don't lose out on some of those items. First of all, though, I'm going to grab the brush that I had already made. I'm also going to grab some shears, and we're going to make a bed, since I forgot to bring one of those with me. Looks like there's some sheep over here in the swamp. Let's go through and shear you and you. Then I'm going to stay up here on this tall tree so that I can sleep, and we should be able to tackle that trail ruins in the morning. So as I was saying, when you're looking for one of these trail ruins structures, you want to be looking in a taiga biome, an old growth taiga biome, which is the ones with the large spruce trees, in the double wide spruce trees. You can find them in old growth birch forests, which are the ones with the super tall birch trees. You can also find them in snowy taiga biomes and jungle biomes, although I expect the jungle biomes will be the ones you have the hardest time finding these structures in because of how dense the trees are. In fact, densely forested biomes seem to be the ones where you find these ruins, because after all, they're meant to be fairly old structures, left behind by some pre-player civilization in Minecraft, and a lot of the time, the forest around here will have grown in the absence of any activity. The goal here is that you treat this as an archaeological dig site, and you use the brush to excavate some findings. We'll probably end up moving these chests around, but we can also use some of the spare shulker boxes that I've already crafted and kept in my ender chest. So as usual, we're going to hold right click on the suspicious gravel and see what emerges. That looks like it is a red candle. Very interesting. We're going to grab that, and we're going to dig up this one as well, where we should be getting I thought it was another pottery sherd, but it is, in fact, a brick. Well, that's entirely fine. We can grab that as well. And you know what? Having done this once before, I did this on a live stream in a completely separate world with an archaeologist from my community, Dr. Heather Christie, also known as Archaeoplays here on YouTube. We are going to follow an archaeological practice here, and we are going to remove the blocks where we found those items and replace them with some kind of marker block, just to see where we found these objects and how many of them there were once we've cleared out this entire thing. So we're going to place some white wool here, and if we want to, we can also add a sign to this. I'll break down some of the spruce wood that I'm getting here into signs, and we can mark off exactly what we got on each of these blocks. So this one up here was a red candle, like so, and this one down here was a brick. And we're going to put the red candle and the brick in here, and we're going to continue to stash things in here or in another shulker box that we can move around once we expand the dig site here. But for now, we're going to start digging on down. Now, since all of the dirt around here occurs naturally, we can be fairly confident that any dirt or stone that we encounter is going to be part of Minecraft's natural terrain generation and not part of the structure, so we can dig this away with reasonable confidence. I wasn't sure at first if this andesite was supposed to be part of a stone structure in this building or part of the terrain, but now having dug out a little bit more of the terrain around here, it's quite clear that there's a big blob of andesite that's generated here, and it should be safe enough for me to remove these blocks of andesite to expose more of the structure below. I'm also going to be fairly careful about how I use my shovel here, because it should be possible to dig up suspicious gravel with the same speed that I dig up gravel and dirt, and since this shovel has efficiency 4 on it, I could potentially insta-mine a suspicious gravel block that's got a precious item in it, so I should be a little bit careful about how I dig up some of this stuff. I'm going to make sure that we have a perimeter of at least 2 blocks around this structure for now, and we're going to expand that perimeter a little bit later once we figure out exactly which direction we're going with this. Likewise, I think it is safe to assume that any ore blocks that we find around the outside here are not an intentional part of the structure. They are just going to be part of natural terrain generation, but we've already exposed some yellow terracotta, and at this point I'm not just making chests to store our archaeological finds, I'm making chests so that we can store all of the material we're getting from this as well. So at this point I've done a little digging. We are starting to uncover a very colourful structure made of terracotta, and it's fairly clear that the mud bricks are meant to be part of this structure as well. The white wool, as I mentioned, is the blocks that I have placed myself, but from the top down here we can also go through and systematically, carefully remove some of these gravel blocks, because each of these is potentially going to uncover more blocks of the structure as we remove them. And once again, these are affected by gravity, and they may have suspicious gravel blocks somewhere underneath, so I'm going to be removing them quite carefully, one at a time. We're also going to be removing any other stone type blocks that occur as part of the structure, along with the dirt, as we can assume that these are effectively debris from the surrounding terrain that has become packed into the structure of this building as time went on and as the whole building became submerged. Now, as you can see, we've now uncovered another piece of suspicious gravel, so I'm going to quickly brush that, and it looks like this time we are getting a pottery sherd, and we're going to be getting different sherds here than the ones we get in other structures like ocean ruins. Right here we have the friend pottery sherd, which is not one we'd get from an ocean ruin or a desert temple. Looks like we've got another piece of suspicious gravel right here. That right there is a pane of red glass. Seems to go quite well with the red of the terracotta in the rest of this structure. We're going to pop that in our findings chest as well, and we're going to mark those 2 locations with white wool. And of course we can label these with different colors if we want to, if we want them to mean different things. We can add glow ink to the signs if you want to, but I think the most important thing is that they remain readable. So you get the idea. This is how we're going to be approaching this structure, systematically where we possibly can, and with a certain amount of caution as we attempt to preserve all of the artifacts within and not end up losing any to suspicious gravel falling. A short time later, I have dug down a little further. We've started to uncover a layer of glazed terracotta partway down this structure, and I'm not certain if the structure continues further down, but it seems like it might do. However, the most important find is right here, where it's fairly clear that an adjacent building, or perhaps a building that is joined to this one but has been separated in some form, has appeared right here. So now I know that in order to uncover more of this structure, I need to start digging out in a lateral direction. And having just checked on the F3 debug screen, that way is north, so we're going to be digging north in order to uncover a little bit more of the structure. And this might be where we end up digging out into the river, so I'm going to be a little bit careful here. I don't want any of this structure to end up flooding. But unless I want to waste all my fireworks getting in and out of this trench, I might go and get some scaffolding or some ladders or something that's going to allow me to leave this trench whenever we are done excavating. We need to drop off some supplies. Or in this case, when we need to expand the trench, and so I need to clear out some of the trees in the area so we can get a good top-down view of what we've uncovered. Now, I've dug out a few blocks of our trench this way and managed to get everything down to what I consider to be the top level of this structure, and it seems like we've widened the trench out a decent amount, although there may still be some more bits of the structure buried a little further along here. At this point, I'm also considering removing the coarse dirt from the structure. While it is an unusual block, I think it's also just meant to be part of the dirt and gravel that has ended up packing into this structure as it got buried. So we're going to remove this one from the outside here, and we're going to remove the couple that are on the inside of the structure, mainly because I have a suspicion that they would start uncovering some more suspicious gravel. Let's brush this one while we can. That's looking like some blue dye, some light blue dye is emerging from that. Well, that's kind of interesting in itself. We'll get rid of these gravel and dirt blocks, and it looks like at this point, oh, there is one more suspicious gravel block under here. So let's get that, and that looks like another pottery sherd. That one looks like a creeper to me. Yeah, there we go, the danger pottery sherd. All right, we'll grab that, we'll break that block, and we'll once again mark off where each of these artifacts appeared. Now, it seems to me like we had hit the floor of this structure, and if we dig down, it looks like the blocks do continue, so I wonder if there is a ground level slightly below this. Oh, hang on a second, we do have a suspicious gravel block over here as well, so we need to brush this, and it seems like, oh, what's that? That looks like an armor trim to me. There we go, a smithing template. Now, this is one of the reasons that the more action-inclined among you might be interested in digging up one of these ruins, because there are 4 smithing templates that can be found as part of these trail ruins, and getting all 4 of them in this expedition would be a really, really cool thing. We'll be on the lookout for any more suspicious gravel blocks as we dig here, but that indicates that potentially the ruin structure might go this way as well as going north. It might spread out to the north and south. Let's see what we find as we dig. Okay, a short time later, we've uncovered much more of the structure, along with some very exciting finds, because in this room here, adjoining what I'm thinking of as the tower, now that it's reached this sort of height coming up from our trench, we have a lot of suspicious gravel. I've also managed to spot a couple of other suspicious gravel blocks around here. We had one in the wall right there. There are a couple over here, and there might even be some buried further down in this structure. Look, there's a couple there as well, and it seems like our coarse dirt and gravel go into this wall, which kind of lines up with the structures that we saw appearing in the river out there and suggests that our trail ruins is going to pivot out that way. So before we do anything else, I'm going to grab some fireworks out of one of the shulker boxes that I've already color-coded. You can do that. You can dye these shulker boxes, and in future we're going to do an episode about ender chest and inventory organizations so that we can better organize some of these things. But for now, I just need to use a single firework to get out of this trench, and we also get to take a look at it from the top down, which is now looking very interesting indeed. We've got a whole dug-out section of this structure, and you can really get a feel for the scale. Then I'm going to drop off all of these raw materials, like the coarse dirt and gravel that I've been gathering so far, and so far I have not heard any of the suspicious gravel breaking. It makes a noise similar to a tool breaking, like a pickaxe breaking when it drops, so you'll know for certain if you've broken one of those things or not. But I'm going to grab a little bit more wool from any sheep I find out here in the tiger biome, because it seems like we're going to need a fair amount of it. There we go, I've got a few more signs crafted, and now it is time for a 3-step process. We brush, we place the wool, and then we label. This first block looks like it has another brick coming out, so we're going to get rid of that one, replace it with a wool block, and mark that one off as a brick. The block below this looks like it's going to give us another pottery sherd, so let's grab that one, and this looks like another different one to the ones we've encountered. Nope, that's the friend shard. Okay, that's the one we already have. Protecting the perimeter from any mobs that appeared in the night is also going to be kind of important. We don't want the creepers dropping in on us while we're doing this delicate work. Next up, this block is going to give us what looks like another pottery sherd. Is this the friend, or is this something something else. Nope, that is a wolf. Ah, the Howl pottery sherd. Okay, interesting. We got that now. Oh, is that beetroot seeds? Yep, looks like it is beetroot seeds. Next up over here, we can brush this one, which doesn't seem to contain much. Oh, nope, there it is. A green candle has come through. And that's a brown candle this time. Looks like some candles were made here. Is this block here going to be another candle? Yep, looks like it is. Okay, so maybe this place was some kind of candle manufacturer. And that's one of the fun things you can do while you're marking off all of these finds. You can sort of begin to put together a picture of what some of these buildings were used for by the civilization that left them here. That is sort of what archaeology is all about, really. It's the study of civilizations that came before and the artifacts that they have left behind. And in this case, they've left behind a Wayfinder armor trim. That's 2 of the 4 armor trims we could be finding here collected now. So very excited to have found that. There we go, the Wayfinder smithing template marked off. Now we can go through and remove some of the supporting blocks here, once again to tidy up the structure a little bit and see a bit more of what's around us. There is a suspicious gravel block here in the floor though, so we will be getting that. And that's going to give us, of course, there had to be at least one, the trademark wooden hoe. There we go. But as you can see, my inventory is now filling up with additional finds, so we're gonna rocket back up to the surface here and drop them off in our finds box. Let's quickly go through some of these other suspicious gravel blocks. This one right here has another pottery sherd in. That was the heart pottery sherd right there. What is that? Oh, is that a sheaf of wheat? Yeah, that looks like wheat to me. And this one here has a dead bush in it. Last of all, we got 2 more suspicious gravel blocks down here. This one's got another brick, and this one has another sheaf of wheat, so nothing too exciting. At this point, I want to point something out here. The glazed terracotta right here is more or less where the floor of that building is when you're standing inside of it, but there is clearly some more gravel underneath this structure, so I'm slightly worried that there may be some suspicious gravel up here in the structure of this building, which is going to drop down if we take out any of the gravel below this. So in order to check that, I am actually going to remove a couple of blocks of the structure right here and start removing the layer from inside of here so that we can, as you can see, expose some suspicious gravel, because otherwise, if we ended up digging out the gravel on this side, then that suspicious gravel block would break and we'd never get to see what was inside of it. So it is actually worth taking out a couple of blocks of this structure. You can, of course, tear it down completely. This is Minecraft. You can do whatever you want to the surrounding landscape, but if you're interested in seeing the shape of these buildings and what they look like once they've been completely uncovered, then you might want to keep some of that stuff in place. And we're going to put all of those mud bricks back once we have uncovered some of the blocks inside of here and checked what's in this suspicious gravel. That just looks like it's a piece of blue dye, so nothing too important to us, but hey, worth recording as part of our dig here. And that right there is an example of how careful we need to be if we want to make sure we can gather every suspicious gravel block within this structure. There is another one down here at ground level, so let's sweep this one as well. That looks like some more beetroot seeds to me, so nothing too important. And once again, we've started to uncover some blocks of glazed terracotta in the floor and some cobblestone, which seems like it might be the ground floor of these structures. Now, digging into the wall on this side where there's another suspicious gravel block, I have found a bit more cobblestone extending this way, along with some stone brick and cracked stone brick, which in this case does not indicate a stronghold where it has previously. Instead, it just indicates that there is a road of sorts going this way. And so if we dig out the remainder of the blocks in this direction, it seems likely that we'll find a pathway that might lead us to more structures buried over here. But it seems like the same is true of this direction and this direction over here, because there are still a couple of gravel blocks in the walls, and it looks like the cobblestone sort of points in this direction. Plus, that's the direction we know there are some more buried structures because they're out there in the river. Meanwhile, now we know that this is what we're thinking of as ground level, or at least street level. I'm digging out around this structure and I don't see any cobblestone, so I think it is safe to assume that the structure doesn't continue any further north. Instead, it branches out to the west, south, and east. Looking at it from above, we should be fairly safe to dig out to the west and south, because those don't have any major areas of water nearby, whereas if we are digging out to the east, we are going to encounter some problems, because once again, that is where the river intersects with this area. So now you know the general techniques that we're employing here. Now you know how safe we're being and marking everything off as we go. I'm going to dig out the areas that don't have water. We'll proceed to the south and the west, excavating a trench like this, digging down from the surface, probably grabbing a bunch of material as we go, but uncovering whatever buildings things we find down there. But then when we come back, we're going to head east, and I'm going to talk a little bit about conduits and how they can help excavating areas like this underwater. Okay, so a short time later, I've dug out as far as I think I need to the south and to the west, and the west one unfortunately didn't really lead anywhere. That was just the end of the road. I could dig a couple more blocks into the walls, but having seen these structures before, I'm pretty confident that once you reach the end here and you just end up digging into natural stone again, you're not going to get anything else. And there's still a few more blocks of gravel and dirt in the road here which we can dig out. None of those are suspicious blocks, so we don't need to brush them. But once again, we just end up with a little bit of cobblestone, and that still transitions out into natural stone here. So it looks like that path ends there, and I can probably just dig out the last few blocks of the stone so that it looks like the road is descending slightly. On this side, we got a bunch of different items. We ended up with a few pottery sherds, some string, some more dyes. There's a bit of white dye in the wall here and a green candle, and this whole area seems to be made largely out of bricks and mud and fired blocks, and so that kind of leads me to believe that this area is like a kiln of sorts. There was also a burn pottery shard here, which was kind of indicative that there was fire used in this area at some stage, and it seems to make a bit of sense that there was a big oven that they would use to fire building materials. From this point though, in this corner is unfortunately where we start getting into that large ravine that's completely flooded and contains some of the other structures here in this trail ruin, and this sort of central part here does seem to line up with the area on this part of the ruin where the road continues this way. So we are going to have to work our way out into the river here, and for that, we're going to return home. I kind of wish it was raining while I did this, because I did make one trip home already just to grab some scaffolding and some more wool from the sheep farm, and it was so fast getting home with Riptide. But I've still got plenty of fireworks left, so having dropped off some of those supplies, I'm going to get back the firework way. And you might remember that in our previous episodes, when we've gone fishing and acquired a bunch of nautilus shells, and then we dove for a shipwreck and found some buried treasure, we made a conduit, which is around here somewhere. Yes, there it is. We also have another Heart of the Sea in here, and enough nautilus shells to craft another one. You need 8 nautilus shells around a Heart of the Sea in order to make a conduit. And to activate the conduit, we will need to get hold of some prismarine. We need to build a 5-block long strip of prismarine and basically convert that into a 5x5 ring. And in the center of that, without any blocks around the outside, we need to place a conduit. And effectively, you need to make 2 more rings on different axes with the conduit in the dead center. So we end up building another ring around the outside at 90 degrees to that one, and then we're going to fill in the corners like so that we end up with a 3rd ring horizontally surrounding the conduit in the center. Now you'll notice that despite having surrounded the conduit this way, the conduit hasn't done anything yet, and that is because this only works when it is completely submerged in water. Once it's on, you'll notice the conduit behaves very differently. It opens up like this, and there is an eye that opens in the center of the conduit, and you'll see that a status symbol has appeared in the top right. It is possible for some of the blocks inside to be falling water. It doesn't have to be a pure water source, but all of the blocks on the inside need to be waterlogged for this to activate. If we open the inventory, you'll see that we have conduit power, and that the effect refreshes when it starts to decrease. It allows you to breathe underwater permanently, so as you can see, our oxygen meter down there above the hotbar is not moving at all, because it's effectively as though we've drunk a water breathing potion. It also gives you increased visibility and increased mining speed underwater, so you can dig out an area a lot faster. However, in this case, if we end up removing any of the blocks from the rings of the conduit, you'll notice that this goes down a stage. The conduit's eye closes up, and the conduit power will affect us in a smaller radius. And conduit power will only affect you if you're standing in or submerged in water. So you can just be standing in a puddle with your head above the water level and you'll still get the conduit power effect, but it won't really do you a huge amount of good. But if you're standing on land, the conduit power effect will drain away until it disappears entirely, because at that point you don't really need it. If any of the water is removed from the interior of this, then the conduit will simply cease to function, and you won't get conduit power anymore when you're in water. In addition to that, once we're sure that we have got most of the suspicious gravel out of the way and that it's not going to fall and break at all, we can potentially use these sponges to dry out the remainder of the trail ruin and examine it from the top down the way that we have excavated the rest of it. Okay, here we are back at the site of our trail ruins, and since there is a decent amount of river nearby which which does not seem to contain trail ruins, I think this is the ideal place for us to set up the conduit. Anything that comes within a certain radius of the conduit's center, once it has the full frame built around it like this, is going to start taking damage. Any hostile mobs like drowned or guardians will take damage when they are within about 8 blocks of the conduit, so it can actually act as a deterrent of sorts, allowing you to operate in relative peace while the guardians or whatever end up flocking around the conduit and end up dying as a result. We're going to continue brushing and tagging these suspicious gravel blocks as we go, but we can already see the effect of the conduit. We have unlimited oxygen down here in case we need to swim around and get into some of these tight spaces, and we also have increased visibility, which makes it a lot easier to see where these structures begin and end. But we might as well go right ahead and start with this one. That looks like it's going to be another brown candle. Okay, let's remove the gravel block, place the wool block, and tag that. This just looks like some wheat seeds, and we're getting the same from this block here as well. Okay, so maybe this one is the grain store. Another pottery sherd out of this one. What are we getting this time? Oh, that is a sheaf pottery sherd, so that kind of doubles down on my idea that this might be the grain store. Let's brush the one next to it as well, and it looks like we're getting another armor trim out of that. Is this one we've had before? No, it's the razor armor trim. That is the third armor trim we were likely to get from this area. Fantastic. Looks like we're getting another brick out of this block. There we go. That's a piece of yellow dye coming out of this one. And I guess one of the cool parts about this being underwater is that we can swim into these nooks and crannies inside the buildings and check around for anything that might be a suspicious gravel block that we don't want to disturb. Oh, another armor trim is coming out of here, and that looks like it's the one that we didn't have already. We've got all 4 of them. That is the Shaper armor trim. Fantastic. So happy we found all 4. Oh no! I just heard the sound of suspicious gravel falling. That is the first time we have done that. It actually sounded more like glass breaking than a tool breaking, and oh gosh, it's nighttime on the surface, and I had no idea because the conduit was making it so bright underwater. But that was our first real mistake of this dig. We unfortunately dug into an area where there was suspicious gravel behind the scenes, behind a couple of blocks, and that really illustrates why it is important to excavate these areas with care. Unfortunately, not a huge amount I could do about that because we're underwater here, and I really wasn't sure in which direction the structure of the trail ruins was going to go. So my choices were either completely dry out this area and dig it all from the top down, or potentially disturb that block through the wall, which we ended up doing. Speaking of which, now these are all properly labeled, I should probably drop them off in the finds chest, and at last we have all 4 of those armor trim templates all together. I'm going to have to expand this into a double chest though, because we now have more unique items than it is possible to fit in a single chest, so we'll expand this one outwards. We'll throw the pink stained glass in here, and let's get back to excavating in the river. And sometime later, we have a little bit more work done on this site. There's a little bit has happened. I did end up, unfortunately, losing at least 1 more suspicious gravel, and there was really nothing I could do about it. I was digging around here, trying to clear out an area to see if there were any more structures on the other side of the road. I dug into 1 block here, which was part of a stone wall, and then I heard a breaking noise. So clearly there was a little patch of suspicious gravel there that maybe if I had opened this up from the top, I might have been able to get to, but unfortunately, it seems like there was nothing I could do. It just fell as soon as it made contact with the water, or as soon as I removed the block, or something. And now the squid are playing in it happily. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring you folks back in is that I made a couple of discoveries over here that are really important for the unique items that we can find here in this trail ruin. There is one here, which is another pottery sherd, so we're going to have to mark that one off. It's another one of the heart ones that we have found elsewhere, although this one seems to be a heartbreak pottery sherd this time, so something a little bit different. But over here in the corner, I think it's this one here, I started brushing this, and then I stopped brushing it, and the item will just recede back into the suspicious gravel for you to brush it again a little bit later. This is a unique music disc that can only be found here in the trail ruins, and this is actually the music I have been using as the outro music for Season 3 of the Minecraft Survival Guide. This is Relic by Cherof, and I'm really happy that we found a copy of this that exists in-game, because this is another one of those unique items that you can't get any other way. I've also excavated the entirety of this gravel road that leads back towards the main structure of the trail ruins, and this is all just gravel and surface material that we can now shovel off to see if there is any suspicious gravel below. I don't believe there was any as part of this, so we can simply dig this out. But as before, I'm going to dig a couple of blocks into the walls around here because there are still structures hiding within the stone of the surrounding area, and this is all stuff that we plan to excavate as part of this dig. So we've got 2 suspicious gravel blocks here. This one looks like another green candle, so we'll grab that. And this one is an emerald. I've managed to find a couple of emeralds now in some of these suspicious gravel blocks, which does have some indication that the people who inhabited these now ruined structures probably used emeralds to trade in the same way that villagers do. They may even have been an ancestor or a lost civilization of the villagers themselves. That looks like another relic music disc is coming out of that. Fantastic. I'm so happy we've got a duplicate of that now. And there's another gravel block below that which we can get, which seems to contain a purple candle. Fantastic. There's even one behind that as well. So they're kind of clustered together in whatever remains of this area, and that's a pink glass pane. Oh my goodness, we actually have a third music disc. I was expecting these things to be relatively rare. I think in the previous trail ruins that I'd excavated on the stream, we only ever found 1 or 2 of those, or maybe I just wasn't there for the other ones. But man, we have that disc in triplicate now. I tell you, that was one of the ones I was worried about, the suspicious gravel breaking. Every time I heard that breaking sound, I thought, oh man, we've lost a chance at getting the unique music disc, but it seems like there are plenty of them to go around. Must have been a popular record at the time. And this is honestly why it's worth investigating these little side areas, because there are 4 more blocks of suspicious gravel, and in addition to the fact that it's got a slightly different texture, it can be a little difficult to see at times. You can also tell suspicious gravel by the sound your footsteps make while you're walking on it. Regular gravel sounds a little high-pitched, a little drier, and the suspicious gravel has a slightly different sound to it. It's slightly deeper. So in case you're having trouble seeing which blocks are suspicious gravel and which aren't, you could always try relying on your hearing for that as well. Now, the durability on my brush is about to vanish, and we're about to get our 4th relic music disc. That's kind of unbelievable at this point. We're getting an emerald from that one as well, and there goes my first brush. So unless we've lost a little bit of durability where I've broken the block with the brush in my hand, and maybe like it's taken some durability off of that, we have probably just found our 64th artifact from these trail ruins. So that's honestly a pretty decent haul. Nope, I have just confirmed it. Breaking blocks with the brush in your hand does not take any durability. It's not like using a pickaxe on dirt. It's actually not going to deduct any durability unless you use the brush for its intended purpose. So we can pretty much confirm that we found 64 items using that brush, since it was a fresh one when we started this excavation. I'm going to continue to excavate this area until all of the buildings have been cleared out. And once we're done with that, we'll move on to drying out this area using the sponges that we've brought with us, so you can see what all of this looks like out in the open. Okay, I think I can tentatively say that we are done excavating the trail ruins down here, and it's still very much a mess, partly because I put wool blocks everywhere I found anything interesting, but partly because the whole thing is underwater. But we're going to do something about that right now, because what we're going to do is grab a bunch of the dirt and stone and other materials that we have pulled out of this pit, and we are going to build a box around where we want to dry out. Basically, we're going to build a large dirt box around this area all the way up to the surface of the water here. As we have done in the rest of this structure, I'm probably just going to leave a 2-block gap between the dirt box and the road, and at road level, we're also going to make sure that we have left a decent floor to this entire thing, because we don't necessarily want to worry about all of the area underneath. And so at this point, I've floated around and I've sealed off the bottom of the ravine floor here, and as much as I can of the outside, including the natural wall of the ravine here, of course, I've sealed this off with a wall of dirt. And what we're going to do is turn this into a series of basically like 5x5 boxes. That's taken most of the dirt I had in my inventory. We've still got a bunch of it here, of course, which we'll need because we're going to be systematically removing all of the water from inside this 5x5 box by using sponges. Then we can move on to the next 5x5 area and do the same thing again, but many of these dirt walls will need to remain up just so the water from outside doesn't flood back in and refill this space. What I'm going to do is swim on down here, create a kind of pillar of dirt up the middle. At the very top here, I'm going to remove a block and we're going to place a sponge right on top like so. And that's going to remove a bunch of water from the surrounding area, turning that into a wet sponge, which we'll need to dry in a furnace or in the nether. Then we can dig this pillar down a couple of blocks, place another sponge, and that will do exactly the same thing. Here and there we may need to place additional sponges attached to the walls just to make sure that the removal of the water in that area is a little more concentrated. Mathematically speaking, there are probably a slightly more efficient way of using sponges, but there we've used maybe a handful of sponges, 6 or 7. There we go, 8 sponges total, and this entire 5x5 area is dried out all the way down to the path of our trail ruin. It's a pretty significant chunk of this river cleared out pretty efficiently. And now we're going to move on and do that in individual sections until this entire ravine has been dried of all of this water. The sponges are now drying in the furnace, and little by little we worked to systematically dry out the entire ravine. And so now we actually have the entire trail ruin exposed and not waterlogged. There may still be a tiny amount of it back here where this section of the building didn't quite get cleared out because it was underwater and I didn't want to move too much stuff around, but I'm pretty certain that back here there will not be any more structure. It seems like there's a couple of pieces of gravel back here and very little else, so we can just clear that out. Yeah, okay, that's just mud brick underneath. Perfect. So we now have everything we want all dried out, and we can start to expand the trench that we started with the main section of trail ruins, and we can finally have the entire thing exposed to the sky, which will be really nice just to be able to look down on it from above and see the entire structure of the trail ruin, where right now we are just getting these little peaks and fragments of it. But I don't believe there are any more artifacts left to find, and so this is our final haul from the trail ruins. We have completely destroyed one brush, and the other brush has had 24 durability used on it, so a total of 88 items came out of this trail ruin, and it may not seem like that much considering that there are 54 slots in this chest and it's not entirely full, but of course a lot of these are going to double up in the case of things like the wheat seeds, the dyes. All of that adds up to much greater than the sum total of the items that seem to appear here. The most things we got out of this were bricks and green candles, but obviously there's a decent variety of other stuff here as well. I'm very happy that we got one of each of the armor trims, and we got 4 copies of the relic music disc, so that is genuinely a really cool find. I'm very happy that we have so many of those. But without any further ado, let's take that final step, clear off all of the terrain from the top of here, and take a look at the trail ruins in its entirety. And after a lot of work, here is the result of our trail ruins excavation. The whole thing is now uncovered to the best of my ability, and it still looks a little rough around the edges because, of course, we still had to contend with this waterlogged ravine. So there are some walls that are not completely straightened off compared to some others, and honestly, I would love to come back here, excavate all of the stone and other material, and replace all of this with, I don't know, some kind of dark background, like black concrete or something like that, just so we could see truly what the blocks of the trail ruin are, and not have them blending out into the stone and diorite and everything that is part of the surroundings here. But there are some pretty distinct buildings over this entire thing, and of course every white wool block that you can see here represents an item that we found in suspicious gravel. So there are a whole bunch of them in here. As you can see, several of them clustered in houses that we might assume are possessions and things like that. A bunch of music discs around here. This was basically almost like the record store. Maybe they were putting music on while they worked or something like that. And of course this central area where there's wheat and beetroot seeds and dye and bricks and all kinds of different stuff here. But in these 2 shulker boxes here are where I've kept all of our archaeological finds that were stored in that chest, and I've organized them a little bit more. So this one here contains all of the stuff that we could reasonably make ourselves, all of the non-unique loot from the trail ruins, and this one here, of course with the exception of the emeralds, which I considered valuable, this is all of the unique loot that we can get from the trail ruins. 4 armor trims, we have 7 different types of pottery sherd. I presume there might actually be 8 different pottery sherds you can find here, and I simply didn't find one of them, which is a good excuse to go and find another trail ruins. And of course 4 copies of the relic music disc. So I think we came away from this with a remarkable amount of stuff, and I'm looking forward to trying out all of the armor trims and seeing how they look. But there is another reason to go looking for these trail ruins elsewhere in the world, and that is that no 2 ruins are truly the same. It's not like a desert temple or a jungle temple where once you've seen one of them, you've seen them all. Each of these trail ruins is a different formation of buildings. This one looks completely different to the one that we excavated on the Archaeoplays stream. Kind of like villages that you find throughout the world with different formations of buildings, each trail ruin is going to present you with something new, which makes them kind of a fascinating thing to dig through. But the other thing that ties these structures to this sort of proto-villager civilization is, of course, the presence of villager workstations. There's a cauldron in this room, and down here, I believe it was this next one over with the kind of blue terracotta. This has both a regular furnace, a blast furnace, and a smithing table, so we can assume that this was some kind of forge. There is even a smooth stone double slab in here, and the only place that exists in Minecraft's generated structures outside of this trail ruin is outside of a blacksmith's house in a village. The existence of that double slab outside of a blacksmith's house predates villager workstations, so this is once again kind of an interesting proof of this being a villager-esque civilization. If you find one of these trail ruins in a convenient location, you might even want to repopulate it with villagers and try to recreate with a more accurate, active and alive simulation what life was like in these structures before they fell into ruin. As with many things in Minecraft, these structures are very much open to interpretation, so if you have any opinions about exactly how you think this civilization came to be and what caused it to fall into ruin in the first place, let me know. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. But that concludes our cleanup of the trail ruins here, and as we can see, we've got a stack of wool and 23, which amounts to about the amount of durability that we lost from our brush, so that indicates that we did find over 80 artifacts in here. I'm guessing, yeah, 87, 88 is about the sum total of what we got. There's probably a block of wool down here that I broke but didn't manage to collect for whatever reason. Either way, that's a lot of loot from one of these structures, so it is really worth your time, especially with the amount of unique stuff we found here that you cannot find anywhere else. If you're a collector of rare items in Minecraft, or if you're simply looking to uncover a part of your world's history, these structures are definitely worth your time. It took me about 6 hours in total to clear out this ruin and completely excavate it to the sky, so it's a bit of a project, but definitely a rewarding one. Folks, that's where we're going to leave this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. I'm going to pack up my Conduit and take that back to the base. And in tomorrow's episode, we might be looking at something a little bit more technical as we approach the world of general mob farming. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this episode. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.